Oh, hello everybody. How are you? The next one we're going to do is the lesson 11 is factoring trinomials of the form. So we have a second degree trinomial in descending order. So it's the ax squared plus bx plus c. Today we're going to only focus on when your leading coefficient is 1. So there's two cases here. A equal 1 and a does not equal 1. So remember, DL11 is only focuses when a equals 1. So remember what a, b, c, they are any real numbers, and we know the leading term is always positive. If the leading term is negative, we always take negative as the greatest common factor. So this is the approach we're going to use here. So it's called the X method. So what we're going to do is we're going to make X. So we have to fill in the top of the X is always multiply this number, or in this case it can be 1. So multiply this number by this constant. It's always going to be on the top. And this number in the middle, B, is always going to be at the bottom. That's a quick trick, just like we remember the PEMDAS. So now we need to think of two numbers. There's only one unique combination if it exists. So you can call them P and Q. So these P and Q are the factors. So we need to think about any two numbers. When you multiply these two, it gives us the top number. And when you add the same P and Q, give us the bottom number. Well, then how you write it? So x times x is x squared. So we just fill them in x plus P and then x plus Q. Really simple, but then let me show you example. So here, a quick example here is a factor. Look, x squared plus 7x plus 12. That's your second degree trinomial in descending order. So then look, leading coefficient is 1 and the constant is 12. So what do? You multiply 1 times 12 is 12. That's on the top. What's at the bottom? The number in the middle is 7. So now look, 4 times 3 is 12. 4 plus 3 is 7. That's the only combination gonna work. So keep in mind, some people say 6 times 2, 12, but 6 plus 2 is 8. And that's, so you see, if it's factorable, you only see one unique combination. Otherwise, if you cannot think of anything, so it's not factorable, you call the prime, just like prime numbers. So here, how you write it? So when you multiply, is always the x times x is x squared. So the first term going to be xx. Well, then the second is positive 4 and this is positive 3. So you always copy as is. 4 is positive plus 4, 3 is positive plus 3, and that's the answer. That's it. So keep in mind, you're going to multiply the leading coefficient by the constant is always on the top. And the number in the middle is at the bottom. Then you start thinking, two numbers, when you multiply, it give us top number. When you add, it give us the bottom number. And you will see there's only one combination. So make sure before you write the answer, you must think both ways. When you add, it must give us the bottom number. Let me show you some more examples. So here is a, for example, is the factor x squared plus 2x minus 80. So now, before you factor anything, you always think about greatest common factor. So in this case, there is no greatest common factor. Well, then if it's a trinomial in descending order, then we move to X method. So we are focusing on the leading coefficient is 1. So here look, 1 times negative 80 is a negative 80. And what the number in the middle is 2. So now you can pause and think about two numbers. You multiply, give us the top. When you add the same numbers, it gives us the bottom. So remember, 10 times what give us 80? 10, 8 is 80. So we're looking for 2. Well, then 2 is, 10 must be positive. So 10 and negative 8, and that's it. Look, 10 times negative 8 is negative 80. And 10 plus negative 8 is positive 2. And you will not think of any other combination. How you write the answer? Look, write 2 parentheses. And when you multiply x times x, that's going to be x squared. Well, then you copy these numbers. So what first factor is positive 10, what the second factor is negative 8, and that's the answer. Done. But simple. Make sure review your multiplication a little bit. So if you know your multiplication, you think of, people think they're like so fast. Okay, let me show you one more. Well, sometimes you cannot factor because we're not expecting we're gonna factor everything. So sometime, for example, here, factor x squared minus x minus 35. So now the first thing we'll always look for GCF. Remember, anytime you factor, you always look for the GCF. So now there's no GCF again. So now look, there is a 1 here. What is the 1 times negative 35 is negative 35. How many x you can see? There's a 1 here. So it's going to be negative 1. So look, 7 times 5 is 35. That's the only combination we have. Well, no, in this case, there's no way you can. So in this case, there's no factor. You cannot think of any two numbers it give us. So in this case, nothing going to work. So then you write here prime. Prime is the trinomial is not factorable. Remember, that's a unique situation. A rare situation. Sometimes, so you do not write prime for, maybe 1 in 100 problem they gave you like prime. So, because we cannot factor everything. Let me show you a couple of problems when you can take a greatest common factor. So here is one more example. This is factor. For example, 5x squared minus 5x minus 30. Okay, so now GCF always first. So now in this case, 30 does not have x, so you cannot take x out. So GCF is 5. So 5 is the greatest common factor. Leftover is this, 5 times 6. Oh, remember there's always 1 here. So that's the first part. Now, we're going to use the x method only on this trinomial. And this 5 will be the part of the answer. So here is the x method. So there is a 1 here. What the 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. What the number in the middle is negative 1. So go ahead. Think about two factors. What is 3 times 2? Is it 6? So now you have to figure out which factor must be negative. If I write negative here, well, negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. And if you put negative here, well, that is a 3 minus 2 is a positive 1. So you're looking for negative 1. This means this factor must be negative. Look, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. So now 5 will be a part of the answer. Write 2 parentheses. This factor is 2 binomial. So then we're looking for x squared. So x times x is x squared. What is the first factor? Is the negative 3. What is the second factor? Is positive 2. And that's the answer. Done. Okay. So let me show you one last one. I hope you're understanding it because if you know your multiplication, you should be fine. But review your multiplication a little more. And also how we add to protect those integers. For example, here's one more. So it's 2x squared factor completely. 2x squared minus 16x plus 32. So remember, anytime you factor, the GCF is always first if it's possible. X you cannot touch. It is a second degree trinomial in descending order. But if you look carefully, 2, everything you can divide by 2. So 2 is the greatest common factor. So then everything divided by 2. So give us 8x plus 16. Okay. So that is the first step. Now we're going to try the x method on this. So here. So there is 1 here. 1 times 16 is a positive 16. This is a negative 8. So now think about it. So somebody says, look, 8 times 2 is a 16. But 8 plus 2 is a 10. That's not going to work. And the other one is 4 times 4 is a 16. Yeah, 4 times 4 is a positive 16. you're looking for -8. So this means they both must be negative. So I just told you, you must be a little more comfortable how we add, subtract those integers. Look, -4 times -4 is positive 16, and -4 plus -4 is -8. So then the answer is x. Well, there is an x here as well. So copy as is, -4, -4. You can also, they're identical factors. You can write this way too. Or 2 times x minus 4 squared is the same thing. Okay, so that's your factoring trinomial, second degree trinomial in descending order when the leading coefficient is 1. So in this worksheet, if it's not 1, it's very likely there is a GCF. So make sure you look for GCF first. So, but please do it. So let me know if somebody needs help. Thank you, and see you next time.